very nice to be here and to be part of this important project that is trying to tease out some of the causal pathways that we think we can see that lead from agriculture to markets to food security to diet to nutritional status. It's a tall order. Our Hopkins team is part of the Nutrition Innovations Lab, working primarily in Nepal. We were involved in designing and training and implementing the national survey that goes on in the country every May to July. We're going to share some of the basic findings, very simple findings. I can't say that we're going to be at 30,000 feet or 5 feet off the ground because Nepal covers all of those altitudes. So we have to talk about not mean sea level, but mean distance or altitude above ground level. And to talk a little bit about the role of markets and production and how it relates to some specific nutritious foods that are tangible, that are grown or not grown, that are eaten or not eaten in the rural terrain, in the rural parts of the country by the 3 ecological zones. And so the first point that I would like to make is that Nepal remains primarily an undernourished country. I'm not showing the children. The children are wasted and stunted. This is mothers because we're going to focus on the mother's diet. But you can see that the percentage of women who are underweight is running between 15 and 20% in the mountains and the hills. And that wasting is actually quite high in the Terai of the country, where 60% of the population live. There is, however, some overweight occurring in the country, throughout the country, and fairly evenly distributed across these 3 zones, these 3 ecological zones in the mountains, hills, and the Terai. Nepal, in many ways, is 3 countries in one, because these are very different ecologies. And yet that level of overweight starting to occur is somewhat comparable across those areas, suggesting that it may be what is coming into those areas that is leading to it, and I'll get back to that thought in a moment. When we look at prices, Dr. Shively was talking about the cost of the diet and how can people afford a nutritious diet, and the answer is they can't. These are the costs of selected foods. In the markets, we have studied 37 markets across the country each year. And we can see that goat and chicken, for example, the animal source foods, are expensive. That is $4 to $5 per kilo. So that is what you would pay almost, if you like goat, if you can find it in the giant supermarket, you'd be paying about that in the supermarket almost. So this, to a country where income is extremely low, is a very costly food. And as are the other food items, there's some differences between the mountains, which tend to have more expensive foods, and the Terai, which tend to have less expensive foods, that relate to the cost of being high or going high. That's may be misinterpreted, but in terms of altitude, that the costs of getting foods up to the mountains are higher. Even at the point of iodized salt, which you can't see it very well, but there's a gradient there in terms of cost as well, in terms of moving iodized salt from the Terai up to the mountains. So the cost of a nutritious diet is high and often unaffordable. How do people spend their money across the country? This is now combining across the zones, and the bar is total expenditures, that data that we have compiled, and the green is food expenditure, and the orange is non-food expenditure. And what you see, of course, is that these are plotted across an internal wealth index that we have derived from a number of asset data that we've collected and done factor analysis to create a scale that is relevant to Nepal. What you see is that, of course, as you go from wealthier to poorest in the context of the scale that we're working in, people spend less money, not surprising. Also, as you go from wealthier to poorer, the percent of that expenditure, it becomes greater on food. So more and more gets spent on food to survive as people get poorer. And this is the line that explains that percentage. So those are understood and reflect the quality of the data in many respects. How do households spend their money on nutritious foods, the animal foods, the fruits and vegetables that Dr. Webb was talking about? We're only showing the wealthiest, middle, and poorest quintile here for visualization. But you can see, we know that rice is inelastic. People need to eat rice, and they do. And they will spend money on it from the poorest to the wealthiest members of society. Same thing with dal, although there is some gradient there, but where you see the real gradient is in the animal source foods. The dairy products, eggs, and chicken are illustrated here. And you see it with respect to vegetables as well. But there's a very strong gradient that as you go from wealthy to poor, the purchasing of these nutritious foods goes down. Not only the purchase, but the intakes do as well. And so here we see, again, these are now dietary intakes from standardized 7-day food frequency methods that we use in this study. And we see that rice remains invariant, and almost dal, as the lentil soup that goes with rice. So rice and lentils are the main mainstay in the diet. But we see that as families are poorer, their intakes of dairy products, eggs, chicken, other meat products, and vegetables also go down. So the quality of the diet goes down. The diet is costly. If you're poor, you are not able to afford an adequate diet, an nutritionally adequate diet. This is the median intake, number of times per week that women will consume certain foods. And again, here's the rice as our standard, our control, twice a day, irrespective of whether you're wealthy or poor. Dal starts to go down in terms of the median number of times per week that women will consume this food. So this is 12, 11 or so, and this is down to 6. So the diet gets thinner. But you'll see dairy products are hardly eaten, irrespective of the wealth in this scale. Eggs are virtually not consumed at all. The median intake is 0. The median intake for chicken is 0. And hardly better for the various vegetables. Where you see intakes going up is in the wealthier parts of the distribution, the highest intake, the highest wealth quintiles. But at the median, we see very little of these foods being consumed. So that's the bad part. Now, a little bit of hope. Here are the percent of households producing foods. It's about 20, here's the 50% mark. It's about 20 to 40% of the families in the mountains, the hills, and the tri are producing some of these foods themselves. Nepal remains a rural, farming, subsistence economy. There, 2/3 of all the families report farming as their main occupation. They need to grow foods in order to eat foods in this economy. And that's what we see. Across the mountains, hills, and Terai, about 40% grow rice. The soil is better in the Terai. The agriculture is better. So there's more of those lentil-type foods that are grown in the Terai than in the hills and in the mountains. Dairy products remain about 30% or so. Eggs vary, and as does chicken. So it's roughly 20 to 40% will produce or grow or raise food at the household level. Does that matter? And the answer is, the data suggests it does matter very much. That here is it's an odds ratio. So it's the odds of eating more food than the median in the population. if the family grows the food. And so what we see is with rice and dal, that's our control, there's no difference. If they grow it, they don't grow it, they're eating it, because that's the mainstay of the diet. The final message looks at the markets again. And this is across the country. And this is we looked at what are the foods that when people go to the market, what do most people buy? And the answer is edible oils, snacks, instant noodles, sugar. There's the top 4. And then we get into onions and potatoes, which we know are important, and tea and lentils, and chicken gets in there, and gourds. The gourds are cheaper vegetables. But the top 4 foods that people buy when they go to the market are foods that flow into the market from a food industry. Then one more slide. This is, well, what do people spend their money on? This is the median monthly household expenditure on foods. And so it's rice. They have to have rice whether they grow it or not. And then it drops quite markedly. Edible oils, and there's chicken and goat here because it's so expensive. It's not that they buy a whole lot, it's just that it costs so much. And then dal, potatoes, snacks, sugar, instant noodles are in the top. And other foods are very, very, very low. So the breadth of the types of foods that people buy in the marketplace are actually small. It's actually quite narrow and not necessarily nutritious. So, key messages. Rural Nepal remains a country that's undernourished, especially in the dry. Animal foods are costly and prices are higher in the mountains, related to transportation, probably. With greater poverty, households spend less money and a larger share goes on food. With less money to spend, the poor households will buy animal foods and nutritious foods less often. Fewer women will ever report eating these foods, at least in the past week, looking at this over many subjects. And those that do eat them will eat them less often if they are poor. 20 to 40% of households do produce, raise, or grow nutritious foods at some time throughout the year. And if they do, they are more likely to consume these foods. But the nutrition transition is happening. It's happening. There's some overweight in Nepal that you would never have dreamt of it happening 20 years ago. And among the top foods that you see in the marketplace and being bought are not foods that we are trying to encourage in terms of a nutritious basket of foods. In terms of policy, producing nutritious foods at home is likely to lead to more consumption. If they grow it, they'll eat it. And we have to come back to Dr. Shively's sort of mantra of income generation. There has to be a generation of wealth of income in order to create effective demand that will allow people to buy nutritious foods, coupled with nutrition education that is going to guide the selection of those foods and drive the demand. Thank you very much.